Now let's begin. Trevor Walker pressed his forehead against the airplane window, watching the clouds drift beneath him like cotton pulled apart. The business trip to Seattle had been exhausting. 3 days of negotiations with suppliers for his custom furniture workshop, the kind of work that paid well but drained his soul. His phone buzzed. A text from his brother Oscar. "Get home now. Check garage camera." Trevor's stomach dropped. Oscar never texted like that. His brother was the calm one, the steady accountant who measured his words like he measured numbers. Trevor's fingers fumbled as he opened the security app on his phone. The garage camera. They'd installed it 6 months ago after someone had broken into neighborhood garages. He'd never actually looked at the footage. The video loaded. Trevor's vision tunneled. His 8-year-old daughter Emma knelt on the concrete floor of his garage. Her small knees pressed into a scatter of broken glass, blood pooling dark beneath her. Randolph Sears, his father-in-law, stood over her with his arms crossed, his weathered face twisted into something Trevor had never seen before, pure contempt. Emma's face was streaked with tears, her whole body shaking. "Apologize for being born." Randolph's voice came through tinny but clear on the phone speaker. Trevor couldn't breathe. His daughter's mouth moved, small sobs escaping, but she couldn't form words through the pain and fear. His wife Inez appeared in frame, walking to Randolph's side. She held a glass measuring cup. Trevor watched, his mind fracturing, as she deliberately dropped it on the concrete. It shattered. Inez picked up the largest pieces and handed them to her father. "Add the pieces from the kitchen," Inez said. Her voice was steady, calm, like she was discussing grocery lists. Randolph took the glass shards and placed them deliberately in front of Emma. "Move forward. Kneel on these two." Behind them, Trevor could see others. His mother-in-law Eunice Sears. Inez's brothers Stanley and Philip Sears. Stanley's wife Hazel. Philip's girlfriend Kelly. Even Randolph's sister Trudy. They stood in a loose semicircle, watching. 3 of them held phones up, filming. "Please," Emma whimpered. "Please," Daddy said. "Your daddy isn't here," Randolph cut her off. "And you need to learn that in this family, we don't tolerate disrespect." Trevor's hands shook so violently, he nearly dropped his phone. His daughter. His Emma. The little girl who collected rocks and named them. Who fell asleep holding his hand every night. Who laughed so hard at bad jokes that milk came out her nose. He looked at the timestamp. 18 minutes ago. Trevor stood abruptly, knocking his laptop bag into the aisle. The businessman next to him jerked awake. "Sir, we're still in flight." Trevor was already moving toward the front of the plane. A flight attendant stepped into his path, her practiced smile in place. "Sir, you need to return to your seat. I need to speak to the pilot. Now." "That's not possible. Please." Trevor leaned in close, his voice dropping to something cold and flat. "My 8-year-old daughter is being tortured. I have video evidence. I need an emergency landing. And if you don't get me to that cockpit in the next 30 seconds, I will break down that door myself, and you can explain to the FAA why you prevented a father from saving his child's life." The flight attendant's face went pale. She must have seen something in his eyes, something that made her believe every word. She picked up the phone receiver mounted to the wall. 2 minutes later, Trevor stood in the cockpit doorway speaking to the captain. He showed the video, watching the pilot's expression harden. "We're 45 minutes from San Francisco," the captain said. "But there's a regional airport in Redding, 20 minutes out. I can get authorization for an emergency landing." "Do it." As the plane banked, Trevor scrolled through his contacts to a name he hadn't looked at in 15 years. Santiago Pope. The last time they'd spoken, Trevor had told Santiago he was done with that life, done with the things they'd done together in those blurred years between military service and civilian life. Santiago had understood. He'd said if Trevor ever needed him, really needed him, to call. Trevor pressed dial. "Walker." Santiago's voice was exactly as Trevor remembered, gravel and smoke. "Didn't think I'd hear from you again. I need a favor. A big one. Talk to me." Trevor explained in short, clipped sentences. He heard Santiago's breathing change. "Give me the address," Santiago said. "I'll be there in 90 minutes. I land in 45. I'll be there in 2 hours, maybe less." "Trevor, what do you want me to do when I get there?" Trevor watched the clouds break apart below him, revealing the patchwork of California farmland. He thought about Emma's knees on that glass. The casual cruelty in Inez's voice. The family members filming it like entertainment. "Make sure they don't leave. I don't care how." Understood. The line went dead. Trevor called Oscar next. Jesus Christ, Trev, I've been trying to call you. I saw it. I'm landing in Reading in 15 minutes. Where are you? I drove to your house. They won't let me in. Randolph answered the door, said it was family business and I should leave. I can hear Emma crying from outside. Trevor's jaw clenched so hard his teeth ached. Stay there. If they try to leave, slash their tires. All of them. I don't care if you have to call the cops and make a scene. Trev, what are you going to do? Whatever I have to. The plane touched down hard on the small Reading airstrip. Trevor was out of his seat before they'd fully stopped taxiing. The flight attendant tried to explain procedures, but Trevor was already at the exit door. A police car and ambulance waited on the tarmac. The pilot must have called ahead. A young officer approached. Sir, we understand there's an emergency with your daughter. Then get out of my way. Trevor pushed past, running toward the terminal. He had no luggage, nothing but his phone and wallet. He found a cab driver smoking by his taxi. $300 to get me to San Francisco in under 2 hours. Cash. The driver looked at Trevor's face and dropped his cigarette. Get in. They flew down I-5, the speedometer pushing 90. Trevor's mind raced through scenarios, possibilities, outcomes. He'd spent 6 years in Army intelligence, then 3 more years doing things for people who appreciated discretion and results. He'd walked away from that world when Emma was born, promised himself he'd be a better man, a normal man. He'd built furniture instead, made tables and chairs and bookshelves with his hands, worked wood into smooth grain and clean joints. It was honest work, simple work, but his hands remembered other things too. His phone rang. Santiago. I'm outside your house, Santiago said. Your brother's here. There's a Mercedes, 2 BMWs, and a Lexus in the driveway. I count 8 adults inside based on movement past windows. The crying stopped about 10 minutes ago. Trevor's blood turned to ice. What do you mean it stopped? Can't tell from out here. Could be good, could be bad. Want me to go in? No. Wait for me. 15 minutes. The longest 15 minutes of Trevor's life passed like hours. Finally, his street came into view. The cab screeched to a stop. Trevor threw bills at the driver and was out before the car fully stopped. Santiago leaned against a black SUV, looking exactly as Trevor remembered, tall, rangy, with the kind of stillness that suggested violence waiting. Oscar paced nearby, his face pale. Front door? Trevor asked. Locked. Deadbolt from inside, Santiago said. Side door to garage is your best bet. Want me to? Trevor was already moving. He tried the side door. Locked. He stepped back and drove his heel into the door next to the handle. The frame splintered. 2 more kicks, and it gave way. The garage was empty except for blood on the concrete floor. Fresh blood. A trail of it leading to the door into the house. Trevor followed it. He pushed through the door into his kitchen. The house was too quiet. His house. The place he'd sanded floors and painted walls. Where he'd hung Emma's artwork on the refrigerator. Where he'd taught her to crack eggs for Sunday pancakes. Voices drifted from the living room. Trevor moved silently down the hall, years of training taking over. He could see them through the doorway. All 8 of them, sitting in his living room like it was a casual gathering. Randolph sat in Trevor's recliner like a king on a throne. Inez perched on the arm of the couch, examining her nails. Emma was nowhere visible. Where is she? Trevor's voice cut through their conversation like a blade. They turned. Randolph's expression didn't change. Trevor, you're back early. Where is my daughter? In her room, Inez said, not looking up from her nails. She needed to learn a lesson about respect. Trevor took 3 steps into the room. Everyone tensed. They could see it now, whatever was in his face. Get out of my house. Randolph actually smiled. This is a family matter, Trevor. You don't understand how we do things in our family. Inez tried to tell you, but you never listened. Children need discipline. Real discipline. Your soft parenting was. Trevor crossed the remaining distance in a blur. His fist connected with Randolph's jaw with a crack that echoed. The older man toppled backward, the recliner tipping over. Stanley and Philip jumped up, but Santiago appeared in the doorway behind Trevor, and they froze. Stay down, Trevor said quietly to Randolph, who was clutching his face. All of you sit. Down. You can't, Inez started. I said sit. Oscar appeared behind Santiago, phone in hand. Cops are on the way. I called them when I heard the yelling. Trevor looked at his wife. The woman he'd married 7 years ago, who'd smiled at him across coffee shops and laughed at his terrible puns, who'd cried happy tears when Emma was born. He didn't recognize her now. Why, he asked. Inez finally met his eyes. She needed to learn. Just like I had to learn. Daddy's methods work. I turned out fine. Trevor felt something break inside him, some last thread of hope. You think you turned out fine? He didn't wait for an answer. He took the stairs 3 at a time to Emma's room. She lay on her bed, curled into a small ball, her legs bandaged with kitchen towels soaked through with blood. Her eyes were open but vacant, staring at nothing. Emma. Trevor's voice cracked. Baby, I'm here. She turned her head slowly. When she saw him, something flickered in her eyes. Then she started crying, deep-racking sobs. Trevor gathered her carefully into his arms, mindful of her injuries. I'm sorry, Daddy, she whispered against his chest. I'm sorry I was born. Trevor held his daughter and felt something cold and final settle into his bones. He heard sirens approaching outside. The police would come. Ambulances would come. There would be reports and statements and custody battles. Legal proceedings. Restraining orders. But that was just the beginning. Trevor Walker had spent 15 years being a good man. A peaceful man. He'd left certain skills behind, certain contacts, certain capabilities. Looking down at his daughter's tear-stained face, at the blood seeping through towels wrapped around her small legs, he made a decision. Sometimes being a good father meant being a bad man. And Trevor Walker knew exactly how to be bad. The emergency room doctor, a tired woman named Dr. Ellen Whitaker, carefully removed the towels from Emma's legs. She inhaled sharply. This wasn't an accident, she said, looking at Trevor. No, it wasn't. I'm legally required to report this. Please do. Emma had gone silent again, staring at the ceiling while Dr. Whitaker worked. 37 pieces of glass removed. 16 stitches in her left knee, 23 in her right. The doctor said she was lucky. The cuts were deep, but had missed major tendons and vessels. Lucky, Trevor thought. His 8-year-old daughter was lucky. 2 police officers took his statement. He showed them the video. He watched their faces harden as they watched. The younger officer, barely 25, excused himself. Trevor heard him retching in the bathroom. Mr. Walker, the older officer said, we'll be arresting everyone present in the video. Child abuse, conspiracy, assault of a minor. The DA will probably add more charges. Good. Your wife is claiming you assaulted her father. I did. The officer studied him. You know we have to take your statement on that too. He was sitting in my recliner, in my house, after torturing my daughter. I hit him once. If that's assault, charge me. The officer closed his notebook. Between you and me, I've got a daughter too. 8 years old, like yours. I hope they throw the book at every single one of them. At 2 a.m., Emma finally fell asleep, her small hand gripping Trevor's. The hospital wanted to keep her overnight for observation. Child Protective Services had already been called. A social worker had come and gone, taking notes, promising someone would visit in the morning. Oscar sat in the corner chair, scrolling through his phone. It's already starting. Inez posted bail. So did Randolph and the others. They're claiming you're unstable, that you attacked them without provocation, that Emma hurt herself, and they were trying to help. Trevor stared at his daughter's sleeping face. Of course they did. There's more. Randolph's got a lawyer. A good one. They're filing for emergency custody on behalf of Inez, claiming you're a danger. They tortured her. I know. But Randolph's got money. Connections. You remember how he is. Trevor remembered. Randolph Sears owned 3 car dealerships across Northern California. He sat on charity boards, played golf with judges, donated to politicians. The kind of man who knew how to work the system, who understood that power wasn't about strength, but about leverage. They're not getting her, Trevor said quietly. Oscar looked up. Trev, I know that tone. Whatever you're thinking. I'm thinking about keeping my daughter safe. The legal system will handle this. The legal system? Trevor laughed without humor. Oscar, you saw the video. 8 adults watched my daughter bleed. They filmed it. And they're all out on bail 12 hours later, filing custody motions. You think the legal system is going to handle this? So what's your alternative? Trevor didn't answer. He was thinking about the look on Randolph's face in that video. The casual cruelty. The absolute certainty that he could do whatever he wanted. Santiago had texted an hour ago. I'm around if you need me. Others too. Just say the word. Others. Trevor knew what that meant. The network of people from his old life. The ones who operated in spaces between legal and illegal, who solved problems that courts couldn't touch. His phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number with a video attachment. He opened it, volume muted. It was from inside the Sears family home. Randolph sat at his dining room table, eyes packed against his jaw, surrounded by his children and their spouses. The camera was shaky. Someone had left their phone recording on a bookshelf or mantel. Thinks he can intimidate us, Randolph was saying. This is what happens when you marry beneath you, Inez. I told you. Some military nobody who plays with wood for a living. Daddy, he has the video, Inez said nervously. So what? We have lawyers. We have our story. Emma's always been a clumsy child. She's not clumsy. You made her kneel on glass. Stanley interjected. Watch your tone with me, boy. Randolph's voice went cold. We were teaching her a lesson. That's what parents do. My father did it to me. I did it to you. And you'll do it to your kids when you have them. This is how our family works. How we maintain discipline and respect. But Trevor Walker is nobody. A man with no family money, no connections, no power. He'll make noise, the courts will give him some supervised visits, and eventually we'll get full custody of Emma. Then we can raise her properly, without his interference. Philip spoke up. What if he doesn't back down? Randolph smiled. Then we'll make him. I've already talked to my lawyer about filing harassment charges. Restraining orders. We'll paint him as unstable, violent. By the time we're done, he'll be lucky to see his daughter once a month. The video ended. Trevor stared at his phone. Someone in that house had recorded this and sent it to him. A warning, maybe, or information. Either way, it confirmed what he already knew. The legal system wouldn't save Emma. Custody battles took months, sometimes years. And men like Randolph knew how to manipulate those battles, how to drag them out, how to win through attrition and expensive lawyers. Emma stirred in her sleep, whimpering. Even unconscious, she was afraid. Trevor made his decision. He texted Santiago, tomorrow. We talk. The response came immediately. I'll bring the others. Oscar was watching him. Trev, please tell me you're not about to do something stupid. Trevor looked at his brother. I'm about to do something necessary. There's a difference between justice and revenge. Maybe. But right now, I don't care about the difference. I care about making sure my daughter never has to see those people again. Making sure they can't hurt her. Making sure they understand that there are consequences for what they did. The courts will give them probation and supervised visitation. Maybe some community service. Men like Randolph don't go to jail for this. You know that. They know that. That's why they're not scared. Oscar was quiet for a long moment. Then, what do you need me to do? Nothing. This isn't your fight. She's my niece. That makes it my fight too. Trevor felt something tight and his chest loosened slightly. Thank you. But I need you to stay clean. Someone has to be able to take care of Emma if this goes wrong. If what goes wrong? Trevor didn't answer. He was already planning. The meeting happened in a warehouse south of Oakland that Santiago owned through various shell companies. Trevor arrived at dawn, Emma safely with a friend from his veterans support group, a woman with 3 kids of her own who'd been horrified by the story. Santiago was there with 3 others. Mickey Stevens, who'd worked private security in a dozen countries and knew things about making people disappear. Gary Barr, who'd spent 10 years in Army intelligence before going private. And Jay Gillespie, a lawyer who specialized in cases that never went to court. Show them, Santiago said. Trevor played the garage video, then the dining room video. Nobody spoke until both finished. Jesus Christ, Mickey finally said. How old's your daughter? 8. And the wife was in on it. Handed him the glass. Gary leaned back in his chair. The legal route is going to be messy. Rich guy like Randolph. He'll have lawyers that can tie this up for years. Best case, you get full custody eventually. Worst case, he uses his connections to paint you as the unstable one. I know. Jay tapped his pen against his notepad. I can help with the custody battle. File emergency motions, restraining orders. But Gary's right. Men like Randolph know how to work the system. And he's already got a head start with his lawyer. I'm not interested in the legal route, Trevor said. At least, not primarily. Santiago smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile. Now we're talking. What do you want? I want them to understand what they did. I want consequences they can't buy their way out of. I want them to feel what Emma felt. Revenge, Mickey said. Justice, Trevor corrected. The kind courts don't deliver. Walk us through what you're thinking, Santiago said. Trevor pulled out his laptop. He'd spent the night researching, planning, using skills he'd thought he'd left behind. Randolph Sears, age 61, owns 3 car dealerships. Estimated net worth, $45 million. Has his fingers in a lot of pies, city council connections, charity boards, country club memberships. That's his armor. That's what makes him think he's untouchable. So we strip the armor, Gary said, understanding dawning. We strip everything. But we do it smart. Nothing that comes back to me. Nothing that compromises Emma's custody case. In fact, everything we do needs to strengthen my position. Jay nodded slowly. I can work with that. What's the plan? Trevor opened a file folder. Inside were financial records, business documents, social media screenshots. He'd been busy. Randolph's dealerships. On paper, they're successful. But I accessed some records. How? Mickey interrupted. Trevor smiled. I made a call to someone who owed me a favor from the old days. Turns out Randolph's been cooking his books. Tax fraud. Lots of it. The IRS would be very interested. That's legal revenge, Santiago said. I thought you wanted them to feel it. That's step 1. Destroy his business, his reputation, his financial cushion. Take away his power. Then, Trevor pulled out another folder. Then we get creative. He showed them the plan. All of it. The men around the table listened, their expressions shifting from surprise to approval to something darker. Jay paused. That's vicious. Is it legal? Trevor asked. Parts of it exist in a gray area. Other parts are definitely illegal. But if we're careful, if we compartmentalize properly, nothing points back to you. And them? Trevor asked. Does it hurt them the way they hurt Emma? The men looked at each other. Santiago spoke for all of them. Yeah, Trevor. It does. But you need to be sure. Once we start this, there's no taking it back. Trevor thought about Emma's face as she knelt on that glass. The way Inez had handed over more shards like it was nothing. The 8 people who'd watched and filmed and done nothing. I'm sure. Then let's get to work, Santiago said. The plan unfolded in stages. Jay started the legal paperwork, emergency custody motions, restraining orders, formal child abuse reports with the DA. That was the surface level, the legitimate fight. Beneath that, the real work began. Gary made calls to contacts at the IRS, anonymously tipping them to irregularities in Randolph Sears's business filings. Not enough to prove Trevor's involvement, just concerned citizens reporting suspicious activity. Mickey started surveillance on the Sears family, documenting their movements, their habits, their vulnerabilities. And Trevor? Trevor watched Emma slowly come back to herself. She didn't ask about her mother. She had nightmares. She flinched when anyone raised their voice. But she held his hand constantly, as if afraid he'd disappear. The first blow landed a week later. The IRS announced an audit of all 3 Sears dealerships. Randolph's lawyer called it a coincidence, politically motivated, a distraction from the real issue of Trevor's violent behavior. But the audit was real and thorough, and what they found was damning. 2 weeks after that, the story hit the local news. Prominent businessman under investigation for tax fraud. Channel 5 had somehow gotten hold of documents showing years of inflated expenses, hidden income, falsified records. Randolph's carefully constructed image began to crack. Trevor watched from Emma's hospital bed. She'd had to go back in for an infection in one of her wounds, as Randolph gave a press conference denying everything. The man looked smaller somehow, his confidence shaken. Is that the bad man, Daddy? Emma asked quietly. Trevor stroked her hair. Yeah, baby. But he can't hurt you anymore. Promise. I promise. And Trevor Walker always kept his promises. But the financial investigation was just the beginning. Trevor had learned patience in the Army, learned that the best operations were the ones that unfolded slowly, each piece connecting to the next in ways the enemy didn't see until it was too late. Randolph Sears and his family had made a fundamental mistake. They'd thought Trevor was nobody. No connections, no power, no ability to fight back. They'd forgotten that the most dangerous men aren't the ones with obvious power. They're the ones who know how to operate in the shadows, who understand that true power isn't about what you have, it's about what you're willing to do. And Trevor Walker was willing to do whatever it took to protect his daughter. The war had just begun, and the Sears family had no idea what was coming. 3 weeks after the incident, Trevor sat across from a family court judge. Emma was with Oscar, safe, healing slowly. The physical wounds were closing, But Trevor could see the psychological damage every time she woke screaming from nightmares, every time she flinched at sudden movements. Inez's lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Gabriella Simons, was arguing for supervised visitation. Your Honor, my client deeply regrets the incident. However, she maintains that Mr. Walker's violent response, assaulting her elderly father, demonstrates a pattern of instability. Ms. Walker simply wants to see her daughter, to rebuild their relationship. Jay Gillespie stood. Your Honor, the video evidence clearly shows Ms. Walker actively participating in the torture of an 8-year-old child. She wasn't a bystander. She provided additional glass shards for her daughter to kneel on. My client's reaction was that of any father witnessing his child being abused. The judge, a stern man named Sterling Hayes, reviewed the video again. Trevor had watched him watch it 3 times now. Each time, the judge's expression grew harder. Ms. Simons, Judge Hayes said, I've reviewed all the evidence. The video is disturbing. 8 adults, including your client, participated in or witnessed what can only be described as torture of a minor child. The child required 39 stitches, and according to the psychological evaluation, is suffering from PTSD. Your Honor, if I may. You may not. The judge's voice was ice. Supervised visitation is denied. All contact between Ms. Walker and the minor child is suspended pending criminal trial outcomes. Mr. Walker is granted full temporary custody. We'll revisit this in 6 months. Gabriella Simons's face tightened, but she nodded. Across the aisle, Inez sat perfectly still, her expression unreadable. Trevor felt a weight lift slightly. Not victory, not yet, but progress. Outside the courthouse, Jay pulled him aside. That went better than expected. Judge Hayes has a reputation for being by the book, but he's also a father. The video did most of our work for us. What about the criminal charges? DA's moving forward with child abuse charges against all 8 adults present. Randolph's getting the worst of it, felony child abuse, conspiracy, assault. He's looking at real prison time if convicted. If. Jay's expression darkened. Rich men with good lawyers rarely see the inside of a cell. Best case, he pleads down to a lesser charge, gets probation. Worst case, his lawyers get the charges dismissed on some technicality. Trevor had expected this. Then we make sure he loses everything else. The IRS audit is moving forward. I've got sources that say they've found enough to file criminal charges. Tax evasion, fraud, the works. That's separate from the child abuse case. Good. What else? Jay glanced around, lowered his voice. Santiago wanted me to tell you Phase 2 is ready whenever you give the word. Phase 2. Trevor had spent hours planning it with the team. It was elegant in its cruelty, perfectly tailored to make the Sears family understand exactly what they'd done. Not yet, Trevor said. Let the legal pressure build. Let them think they're fighting a normal battle. And then we show them what a real fight looks like. That night, Trevor sat with Emma while she ate dinner. She still couldn't kneel properly, so they sat on the couch with trays. She'd been quiet all day, pushing food around her plate. Daddy, she said finally. Yeah, baby. Is Mommy mad at me? Trevor's heart broke a little more. He set down his fork, choosing his words carefully. Mommy made some very bad choices. Grown-up choices that hurt you. That's not your fault. Nothing that happened was your fault. But she said I was disrespectful, that I needed to learn. Emma, look at me. Trevor waited until her eyes met his. There is nothing you could do that would make you deserve what happened. You hear me? You are perfect exactly as you are. Tears welled in her eyes. Then why did they do it? How do you explain evil to an 8-year-old? How do you tell her that sometimes people are broken in ways that can't be fixed, that cruelty can be passed down like genetics? Sometimes people are sick in their heads, Trevor said carefully. Not the kind of sick that doctors can fix. The kind that makes them hurt people. Your grandpa Randolph, he's sick like that. And he made your mommy sick too. Can she get better? Trevor thought about Inez's face in that video. The casual way she'd handed over the glass. I don't know, baby. I hope so. But until she does, she can't be around you. Emma nodded slowly. Then, Daddy, are you going to hurt them back? The question caught Trevor off guard. What makes you ask that? You have that look. The one Uncle Oscar says means you're planning something. Trevor smiled despite himself. His daughter was too perceptive. I'm making sure they can't hurt you again. That's not the same thing. No, it's not. Emma was quiet for a moment. Then she leaned against his shoulder. I don't want you to go away like Mommy did. I'm not going anywhere. I promise. You promise, promise? Promise, promise. She seemed satisfied with that, returning to her dinner. But Trevor knew he was walking a dangerous line. What he was planning, what he'd set in motion, if it went wrong, if anything traced back to him, he could lose Emma forever. Not to the Sears family, but to the system. Foster care. State custody. He had to be smarter than that. Had to be careful. Had to make sure every action, every move, was untraceable. The next morning, while Emma was at her therapy appointment, court-mandated sessions with a child psychologist, Trevor met with the team again. Randolph's bleeding money, Gary reported. The IRS audit froze his accounts pending investigation. He had to take loans to make payroll at the dealerships. His credit's tanking. Word's gotten out about the child abuse charges too. Customers aren't exactly lining up to buy cars from a guy accused of torturing his granddaughter. His lawyers? Trevor asked. Expensive. He's burning through cash fast. Gary smiled. At this rate, he'll be bankrupt before the criminal trial even starts. Mickey pulled up surveillance photos. The family's fracturing. Stanley and his wife moved out of the main house. Philip's girlfriend left him. She wanted nothing to do with the scandal. Eunice is drinking heavily. The stress is getting to them. Good, Trevor said. What about Inez? Living with her parents still? No job. She quit her receptionist position when the story broke. She's isolated, bitter. Blames you for everything. Santiago leaned forward. The question is, how much further do we push? The legal system is doing most of our work. Randolph's going to lose everything through legitimate channels. Almost everything. Trevor corrected. But not enough. He still thinks this is about money and reputation. He doesn't understand what he really took from Emma. So we make him understand, Jay said quietly. Phase 2. Trevor nodded. Phase 2. But we need to be surgical. No collateral damage. Nothing that could blow back on Emma's custody case. Walk us through it again, Santiago said. Trevor laid out the plan in detail. It was complex, multi-layered, designed to hit the Sears family where they'd never expect. Not their money. That was already gone. Not their reputation. That was destroyed. No, Phase 2 targeted something much more personal. Their sense of safety. Their certainty that they were untouchable. Their understanding of the world and their place in it. When Trevor finished explaining, the room was silent. Mickey shook his head. That's psychological warfare. Yes, Trevor agreed. It is. The question is, are you still in? One by one, they nodded. Then let's begin. Phase 2 started small. Randolph began receiving packages at his house. Anonymous deliveries. The first contained a teddy bear covered in fake blood, with a note. She was 8 years old. The second package, delivered 3 days later, was a children's shoe filled with broken glass. The third was a recording. Audio only. Emma's voice, from the garage video, begging them to stop. Looped for 30 minutes. Randolph called the police. They took reports, filed them away. Couldn't trace the packages. They'd been sent from different locations, paid for with cash, no fingerprints. But Trevor knew the packages were working when he saw Randolph's face on the news, haggard and pale, talking about harassment and stalking. The man who'd looked so confident torturing an 8-year-old was now jumping at shadows. Inez started receiving packages too. Medical bills, fake ones, but realistic, itemizing the cost of treating glass wounds. A child's drawing of a family with the mother scribbled out. A mirror shattered into pieces with a note. Look what you've become. Stanley and Philip got their own messages. Photos of their homes, taken from outside at night. Pictures of them at work, running errands, living their lives. A simple message, we're watching. The psychological pressure mounted. The Sears family stopped sleeping well. They installed security systems, hired guards, looked over their shoulders constantly. And through it all, Trevor was never there. Never visible. His hands were clean. He had alibis, legitimate activities, court appearances for the custody case. The packages weren't illegal, exactly. Disturbing, yes. Harassing, maybe. But nothing that could be prosecuted. Nothing that endangered anyone. Just reminders. Constant, escalating reminders of what they'd done. For weeks into Phase 2, Philip cracked. He showed up at Jay's office, disheveled and shaking. I want to make a deal, he said. I'll testify against my father. Tell them everything. Just make it stop. Jay called Trevor. Philip Sears wants to flip. He's terrified, paranoid, barely functioning. He thinks someone's going to kill him. What did you tell him? That I'd pass his offer to the DA. Which I will. But Trevor, if he testifies, that strengthens the criminal case significantly. Randolph's going to prison. Good. Is that enough? Are we done with phase 2? Trevor thought about Emma's nightmares. About the way she still couldn't walk properly, the scars she'd carry for life, physical and psychological. Not yet. One more thing. The finale. Trevor. Trust me, Jay. One more thing. Then we're done. The finale required perfect timing and Santiago's unique skill set. It involved 3 days of preparation, a dozen moving parts, and absolutely zero room for error. On a Thursday night, exactly 2 months after the garage incident, every member of the Sears family received a summons to Randolph's main house. The message claimed to be from their lawyer, urgent family meeting regarding the criminal case. They all came. Randolph, Eunice, Inez, Stanley and his wife, Philip, Trudy, all 8 people who'd been in that garage. When they arrived, they found the house empty. Just a note in the living room. Go to the garage. Trevor watched from his laptop as they walked through his old house. The house he'd signed over to Inez in a quick divorce settlement, taking nothing but his furniture workshop equipment and Emma's belongings. Santiago had broken in hours earlier, set up hidden cameras, arranged everything. The garage was dark. When they hit the light switch, they saw it. The floor had been covered with broken glass. Hundreds of pieces, glinting in the harsh fluorescent light. And in the center, 8 circles. 8 spaces exactly the size of human knees. Projected on the garage wall was the video. Their video. Emma kneeling, bleeding, begging. A speaker crackled to life. Santiago's voice, disguised through a modulator. You have 5 minutes to experience what she experienced. Kneel in your circles. All of you. Now. This is insane, Randolph said, but his voice shook. We're calling the police. Your phones won't work. Jammed. The doors are locked. You have 2 choices. Kneel for 5 minutes, or wait for the gas. Gas. Eunice's voice was high with panic. The house is rigged. Non-lethal, but you'll be unconscious in 30 seconds. When you wake up, you'll still have to kneel. Or we can do this the easy way. Trevor watched them argue. Panic. Try the doors. Watched Inez cry. Watched Randolph try to maintain control while clearly terrified. And then, one by one, they knelt. Their screams, when their knees hit the glass, were music. 5 minutes. That's all Santiago made them endure. 5 minutes of what they'd inflicted on an 8-year-old for over 20 minutes. When it was done, the doors unlocked. The video shut off. A final message. Now you understand. Do not forget. Trevor closed his laptop. It was over. Santiago called 10 minutes later. Clean exit. No traces. Randolph already called the cops, but there's nothing to find. We were never there. Thank you. The thing is, Trevor, I think they got the message. Philip was screaming about confessing. Stanley passed out from the pain. Even Randolph was crying. They understand now. Trevor felt nothing. No satisfaction, no revenge-driven high. Just a cold certainty that justice, real justice, had been served. The legal aftermath came swiftly. Philip and Stanley both cut deals, testifying against Randolph in exchange for reduced charges. The DA's case became airtight. Randolph Sears was convicted on 7 counts of felony child abuse. The judge, citing the video evidence and the testimony of Randolph's own sons, sentenced him to 12 years in prison. Inez received 3 years, suspended with probation. She was forbidden from contacting Emma until Emma turned 18 and chose to initiate contact herself. The others received probation, fines, court-ordered therapy. Randolph's businesses collapsed. The IRS seized his assets. The dealerships were sold to pay tax debts. The family fortune evaporated. And through it all, Trevor maintained his innocence regarding the packages, the harassment, the garage incident. There was no proof connecting him. The police investigated but found nothing. Santiago and his team were ghosts. 6 months later, Trevor sat in family court again. This time, the hearing was for permanent custody. Mr. Walker, Judge Hayes said, I've reviewed the case extensively. The criminal convictions, the psychological evaluations, the evidence of abuse. I'm granting you full permanent custody of Emma Walker. Ms. Inez Sears's parental rights are hereby terminated. Trevor felt Emma squeeze his hand. She sat beside him now, walking better, smiling more, slowly healing. Thank you, Your Honor. Outside the courthouse, Oscar hugged them both. You did it, Trev. You won. Trevor looked down at his daughter, who was drawing on a pad while they talked. She'd started art therapy, found it helpful. She was drawing their house, adding flowers to the garden, a swing set in the yard. Yeah, Trevor said. We won. But that night, after Emma was asleep, Trevor sat on his porch with a beer and thought about what he'd done. The line he'd crossed. The parts of himself he'd resurrected that he'd sworn to leave buried. Santiago joined him, appearing out of the darkness like he always did. Regrets? Santiago asked. About protecting my daughter? Never. About the methods? Sometimes. They tortured a child. They got what they deserved. Maybe. But I'm not sure I'm any better than them now. Santiago was quiet for a moment. The difference is, you did what you did out of love. They did it out of cruelty. That matters. Does it? To Emma it does. She's got her father back. She's safe. She's healing. That's what matters. Trevor knew Santiago was right. But he also knew he'd carry the weight of his choices forever. The packages. The surveillance. The garage scene. Legal or not. Moral or not. Those actions had consequences, for the Sears family, and for his own soul. But when he checked on Emma before bed, saw her sleeping peacefully without nightmares for the first time in months, he knew he'd make the same choices again. Some people deserve justice. Others deserved revenge. And sometimes, the difference between the two was just a matter of perspective. Trevor Walker had learned to live with that ambiguity, because at the end of the day, his daughter was safe. And he'd promised her he'd protect her. Trevor Walker always kept his promises. Epilogue. 5 years passed. Emma Walker, now 13, ran track at her middle school and had discovered a talent for painting. The scars on her knees had faded to thin white lines. The psychological scars took longer, but therapy helped. She had nightmares sometimes, but less frequently. She laughed more. She never asked about her mother. Trevor's furniture workshop expanded. He hired 3 employees, specialized in custom pieces that sold across the state. Oscar became his business partner, handling the books while Trevor handled the craftsmanship. Randolph Sears served 8 years of his 12-year sentence before dying of a heart attack in prison. Trevor didn't attend the funeral. Neither did Emma. Inez moved to Oregon, changed her name, tried to start over. Trevor heard through the legal grapevine that she'd entered therapy, was trying to understand her own childhood, the cycles of abuse that had shaped her. He hoped she found peace, for her sake if not for his. Stanley and Philip both left California, cut ties with the family name. Trevor never heard from them again. Santiago and the team drifted back into their own lives, but they stayed in touch. Christmas cards, occasional phone calls. The bond forged in those weeks remained. And Trevor? He dated occasionally, but nothing serious. His focus was Emma, his work, building a life that was normal and safe and good. One evening, as they were finishing dinner, Emma looked up from her homework. Dad, can I ask you something? Always. What happened to Grandpa Randolph? I mean, I know he went to prison. But did something else happen? The stuff with the packages and all that? Trevor had wondered when this question would come. Emma was smart, perceptive. She'd put pieces together over the years. What makes you ask? I heard Uncle Oscar talking to you once. About Santiago. About Phase 2. I didn't understand it then, but I've been thinking about it. Trevor considered lying. Considered protecting her from the truth of what he'd done. But Emma deserved honesty, within reason. Your grandfather hurt you. Badly. And the legal system, as good as it is, couldn't give you complete justice. So I made sure he understood what he'd done. Made sure he felt consequences beyond a courtroom. Emma was quiet, processing. Did you hurt him? Not physically. But yes, I made sure he suffered. Him and everyone else who was there that day. Good. The single word surprised Trevor. Good. Emma met his eyes. He hurt me, Dad. They all did. They should have suffered. I'm glad you made them. Emma, I know what you're going to say. That revenge is wrong. That I should forgive. That holding on to anger isn't healthy. My therapist says that too. She smiled slightly. But I don't have to forgive them. And you protected me. Not just legally, but in all the ways. You made sure they could never hurt me again. Trevor felt emotion tighten his throat. You're wise beyond your years, kid. I learned from my dad. She returned to her homework. Then, casually, if I ever have kids, I'll protect them the way you protected me. I hope you never have to. Me too. But if I do, I'll know how. Trevor stood, walked around the table, hugged his daughter. She hugged him back, strong and whole in his. Outside, the sun set over Oakland, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new joys, new moments of healing. But tonight, Trevor Walker sat with his daughter, helped her with algebra homework, and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. The kind that came from knowing he'd done what was necessary, protected what mattered most, and survived with his soul mostly intact. The kind that came from keeping his promises. The kind that came from being a father. And in the end, that was enough. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.